Alright, first things first, NGC3324. I know I've used the background before, kind of just want, I use it as my basic background for these videos. But I got other images I want to show you because the topic today is terraforming, and well, I recently found a piece of software, free and fairly easy to use, for doing AI image generation. Gonna do some more experiments with that in the future, but I asked it to give me a planet that's brown. Not really living. Like, this is something that you would want to terraform potentially. And who knows, maybe you could get it to be like that. The AI helped me green it, but it didn't really respect some of the topographical features of this, but whatever. I also have this one that's kind of in the middle. This one, it respected a bit better. Not perfectly, but anyhow. So, terraforming. And this is part 1. Don't hold me to doing a part 2 anytime soon. That's right now my acknowledgement that there's a lot to terraforming, and I want to cover something that I think a lot of video games, because in fact part of where it got me really thinking about terraforming was seeing something in video game being like, that doesn't make sense. In other games, same thing, and it's also the case for movies and television, where it's like, yeah, that's no. Like the idea of having somebody living on a planet at the time you terraform it, maybe to go from this to this, but not this to anything. Not if you actually terraform it. Why is that? Well, it's because some of the processes that are needed for doing what terraforming is, which is taking a lifeless planet like this and making it into something that supports life, you're gonna have to get some processes going that they're cataclysmic to try to get that going. So going back to my notes, because I know I'm already fumbling around in them. Okay, yeah, so I am set up for where I want to be there. So, something you may not necessarily realize is, initially, the Earth, it's been a while since I've looked at one of these models, but for the development of the Earth, early on, it would have, well, not necessarily been as brown, but would have looked like this, just solid landmass all around. The reason we got oceans and even the atmosphere is because of plate tectonics, volcanism, because, like right now, I'm in North America, right? I saw this research some years ago. They found that there's actually like a dissolved ocean in the mantle underneath North America, okay? It has 4 times the water that's on the surface of the planet. Like every ocean combined, every sea combined, every lake, every river, all that combined, less than this one dissolved ocean in the mantle. Okay? Plate tectonics are necessary for a planet to live because it's recycling the crust. It is how you get the dissolved water out to the surface where it can be useful, but also dissolved gases. The atmosphere itself recycles through plate tectonics and did come out of the mantle at one point. And still does. Whenever there's a volcanic eruption, it's releasing a bunch of gases into the atmosphere, some of which, yes, we do need. Some toxic, but, those settle away and all that. So, if you have a planet like this, then, that if it doesn't have plate tectonics, you can't terraform that, at least not to have it enduring. Many years ago, somebody once gave a presentation that I attended where he talked about how, in theory, yes, we could get Mars to be living kind of easily. You basically just try to trigger the greenhouse effect by pumping in CO2, pumping in methane, things like that. Yeah, it'll work for about 200 years, because at that point, it's exhausted. At the time, he was speaking because we believed that Mars had no plate tectonics. That we now don't believe is the case, but it still is. Even if it's very slow, it still isn't necessarily going to support long life for the planet itself, the nature on the planet itself. All right. Yeah. So I'm just checking my notes. In order to get that to here or here, you would need to get the plate tectonics going, which would involve 2 things. And in my science fiction, I've already described one of those things, which is, I described this system of basically gravity satellites. They're artificial satellites, but they have a very powerful gravity emitters and the ability to focus them. And they can actually just envelop the planet with this system. And you can just use that to grab onto the planet and pull it apart, to pull the plates apart, forcing the faults that can then be where the tectonic plates meet and such. Also, you would use them for raising mountains and lowering valleys, because both influence weather, and you would want, if you're terraforming and planning, you would want to influence the weather, either just because you want to make sure it's going to be stable, or because there's actually some specific reason why, which is actually a point I want to get to later, but I know I'm starting to deviate a little bit from my notes. The other thing that I've not addressed in my science fiction, I am thinking about, maybe I should. Obviously, with plate tectonics, you need the mantle to be active. You need convection currents. You need heat there. What do you do if the planet is too cool? In theory, you would need some way to heat that up, and I think the best way would be probably magnetic induction on one hell of a scale. Fortunately, it's science fiction, and I'm comfortable with just hand-waving things away when it comes to power usage. And hey, it's a planet. It's around a star. Stars have lots of power. Let's just say there's some way you can harness it and do what you need to do. But going back a bit, with the gravitational satellites, the gravity satellites, and this magnetic induction, the magnetic field would be able to pass through the planet to reach the core, not necessarily interfering with everything above it, because not everything is magnetic. Gravity, though, this is one thing that about those gravity satellites, and is why, artificial gravity is legitimately one of the most significant technologies in science fiction, and is so often unused, or at least underutilized, because you would be able to apply a force equally to everything, because that's just how gravity works. If there's mass, gravity influences it, and the force of gravity is equal across that. The whole, don't want to say the name because I don't remember for certain, but the whole, hammer and feather force of gravity is the same. The only reason one falls faster is air resistance. All right. And now I know I'm going a little bit off my notes. That's right. Do want to explain that the whole trying to get plate tectonics started, either way, heating up the core or breaking the crust, you're gonna make that planet not livable for a while. That's just gonna be the nature of that, and it would be hugely cataclysmic. Extinction level events guaranteed, which is definitely why I have this issue in science fiction when I see it's oh yeah, you have to put a colony down on planet, then you can start terraforming. It's no, that colony is not survive. You might be able to have some things that can survive that kind of stuff, but there would not be much. Certainly not many people that would be on the surface of the planet. Yeah, let's just get to the last 2 points. There's a little bit more I could talk about. I can come back to those if I feel like it. So one is, and it's we got this brown planet here. It looks kind of lifeless, right? It might be fine though. There's one thing in my Catherine verse that it's in a comic ship Catherine, which not the one of the two I've written so far. Well, two I've published so far. Working on another. Of those, I don't really recommend I Call Me Ship Catherine. Sorry that's the one that I'm mainly leaning on here. But one thing that I do establish there is the idea that this is fine. A world like this is fine. It's still viable. It's just you may not have a living colony on there. It might be more industrial. Because one of the things you could do, it's I already have described this, massive array of satellites around there that can control gravity. Well, you could use that then to adjust the rotation of the planet. In one of the previous videos, it was one of the manufacturing ones, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2, I talk about how with Mercury, I suggest in my fiction that Mercury is tightly locked to the sun, so you set up a ring around the terminator between the light and dark side of Mercury, a manufacturing system where you bring energy in on the light side, it gets used, and then whatever is left over gets evacuated out the dark side of Mercury. You could do that with an entire planet if you could tidally lock it. So that's something that would be reasonable to do with these gravity satellites, and that might not make the planet the most suitable to live on anyway. But it still is. You could have a plan that, yes, it's just for industry, that you don't have normal housing on there, at least not for families or anything. Which, in a way, there's nothing wrong with that, because you could just have another planet or a space station also in the system. That's where people would actually live. And you're just using the planet for the industrial purposes. And that could be Maybe it has a wealth of certain resources. Or maybe it's just hey, these are resources we can use. We're just going to mine the crap out of it because we need them. Why not? Make it a sacrificial planet. I just want to... But yeah, and it is also... This was in my notes as well. That getting from here to here, that's going to take a lot of effort because, in what I was just talking about with the plate tectonics and, mainly plate tectonics is what I was talking about. Whereas from here to here looks more like just seeding the world with plant life. Okay, so that would be much easier to achieve. And this I feel is like what a lot of people in science, a lot of things I see with science fiction, that they assume, oh yeah, this is all. It's like, no, to get from here to anywhere, it's huge investment. But still, it might not always be necessary. But from here to here also might not be necessary because this might be viable enough for whatever you want to do. Okay, no, I talked about that, so then yeah. That can actually end it. Wow, this is a really short one. I guess at one point that I was skipping over, the whole, if you were to create the plate tectonics on this planet, how that would, release a whole bunch, huge amount of volcanism. It would be an extinction level event, truly cataclysmic. It would be releasing water vapor into the atmosphere. It would be releasing, into the surface. Maybe the planet doesn't really have an atmosphere, but it would be releasing the atmosphere. It would also be releasing ash and dust and toxins and such that you may not want. One thing that I do describe, because, hey, it's science fiction, I can do this, is the idea of aerial drones that would then fly over the planet and would seed it with stuff. Not necessarily plant life. You would want to do that eventually, but you could seed it with stuff to cause rainfall, to cause the water vapor to condense and fall, which would help bring a lot of that ash and dust certainly down out of the atmosphere to the ground. So that kind of stuff would make sense, and with at least that kind of thing is reasonable to do. And that's, I think, really all I got. So yeah, this just gets to be a short one. Good for you. No, that's good for you, not good for me. Good for you, because you don't have to listen to me any longer. So yeah. Link is in the description for the software, the AI generating software that I use to make that, if anyone is curious. I don't know how much I may use it in the future, but it seemed like, hey, I could use it for this. Cool. All right. See you next time.